beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly. And this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of man. Shoulder to shoulder, but still could not redeem them in God's name, but no one could understand.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Veteran Show. This is episode 74 with special guest David Miles. We're going to introduce David to the show very shortly. I just want to go through some announcements. So if anybody's interested, we do a membership card for £10 one-off payment. Card will be sent to you in the post. Also, we got some big news. We have gone into partnership with Wilderness Emergency Survival Training. Now, they have a little woodland area and they're allowed in us to use their facilities to help veterans, etc. So that's a big announcement for us. Also, there's just another announcement. This soldier here has been missing now for over 6 weeks, actually. So yes, so if anybody's hears of this missing soldier or knows his whereabouts, please get in touch. As you know, mental health is a very big thing these days for soldiers and also civilians itself. David's going to touch on that briefly. So I'm going to introduce David to the show. David, it's your first time on the show. You've joined our team. I was looking through you, and I've been looking at your videos and found them really interesting. And actually, Gareth, my cousin, 22 years service in the Royal Signals, said to me, "Have you seen this guy, David Miles?" I said, "Yes, we've messaged him." You've replied, you've joined the team, which is absolutely great. We've looked at others and stuff like that, but you seem to be one of the best. And we've been watching you, and we're so glad to have you as part of the team. Another big announcement as well is the Veterans World magazine. We're going to be in the Veterans World magazine once a month, which is huge for us. We've also been approved by the Armed Forces Covenant. David, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself, mate.
Thanks, Darren. As you guessed, my name is David Miles. I'll give you a kind of brief overview of what myself and Darren have been talking about, what might be useful on this episode. Darren's asked me to come maybe once a month and do these kind of shows. So for today, I'll give you an intro into myself a little bit, and then really start talking about mental health issues that may be affecting you or people that you know, and start talking about how they form, and specifically we're going to kind of focus around PTSD, but equally it can be anxiety or panic, phobias, anything in that kind of vein. We're going to talk about how they're formed and learned, talk about some uncomfortable truths that people need to learn to be able to release negative emotions. I've been working in psychology now for nearly 20 years. And also look at what the difference is between PTSD and anxiety and panic. And then really look at how the type of therapy that I've been doing for the last 20 years with people can work really, really effective with mental health issues, including PTSD. So Darren's given me this platform, so thank you. I'm going to kind of ramble on for about 45 minutes. There's a chance for you to ask questions. If you want to ask any questions, you can type them in, I believe. And if we can get to the end, that's great. Equally, I think at some point, Darren's going to put my email address. You're welcome to email me directly. So a quick brief history is the first part is I've never served. However, having said that, my dad did, and I have a real affinity and value what you guys and girls have been doing. So when Darren approached me and said, "Would you do this?" I said yes. He's not paying me for this, and I don't want anything for this. This is for you, and if it's useful to you, then it makes it worth my time. You can let him know afterwards. 20 years ago, I had a really high-flying corporate job. And for lots of reasons that I won't bore you with, I went through some stuff and ended up having PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And I was off work for 4 months. I tried everything the NHS had to offer. I'm sure if there are people out there watching that have had some issue or going through issues now, I'm a big fan of the NHS, and they did all they could to try and help me, but nothing seemed to work. And then it was the kind of advent of the internet. I came across this guy who lived about 50 miles away from me that did these things called neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy. And after about 2 hours on the phone with him and 5 hours face-to-face on a kind of one-to-one session, I walked out and felt absolutely great. Everything had gone. And as I drove home, I decided what he had just done was what I really, really wanted to do for as long as I could and for the rest of my career. Thankfully, I managed to convince my bosses at the time that they would love to pay for all my retraining because it would benefit me in the job that I did for them. They agreed. They funded me for 3 years of training. And the deal was that I had to stay for a year after the training was completed. Otherwise, I had to pay the money back. And it was a significant amount of money. Anyway, I agreed to that. And a year to the day, I left and started working for myself and doing the kind of things that we're going to talk about throughout this evening. So I've seen many, many people over the years who have suffered from PTSD, anxiety, phobias, low self-esteem, self-harming, eating disorders, depression, and others. And I've mentioned the phrases or the words before. Through the training, I went through a basic training in neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy, and also CBT, which I'll mention later. Then I did the practitioner level, and then I completed the highest tier, which is the master practitioner level, which I've been for the last 18 years. And I do basically now what the guy did with me 20 years ago, and it works. And every client that I have seen over the last 18, 19, 20 years, every single one of them has got better. Now, that is said with no ego, and it's said with no arrogance, because I'm just a normal bloke. I have no God complex like a lot of psychologists seem to have. And I kind of tend to swear quite a lot as well. So I'm going to, forgive me. I'm sure you're used to hearing a lot worse. And to give you an example about how powerful this stuff can be. Last week, I saw a client that had been suffering with panic attacks, anxiety, and PTSD after a traffic accident 3 years ago. She hadn't driven for 3 years. She hadn't her husband was aware that she was going through some mental health issues, but her husband didn't know that she hadn't driven. She'd hidden it from him for 3 years. And he used to go off to work in the morning, and her mum would sneak round and pick her kids up and take them to school, and then would pick them up from school and drop them off home without her husband knowing. And the kids were sworn to secrecy and they were told never to mention that their nan had actually taken them to school and picked them up. Her husband drove her around to see me. Actually, it was 2 weeks ago. We did 2 hours on Teams before I met her face to face. Then we met for 5 hours in one session. And at the end of the session, she drove home. In fact, actually better than that, at the end of the session, I had a chat with her husband while she drove on her own around the block a couple of times and then picked her husband up and drove home. And I keep in contact regularly with clients that I see, and not only is she doing that, she's now returned to work, and a lot of her life is coming back into shape again. So this can happen. This can make changes really quick within people. But fundamentally, there are a few things. You've got to want any change for yourself. If you or someone you know is struggling at the moment, I get quite a few people ring me up or contact me and say, and my first question to everyone is, why do you want to make this change? Why do you want to do this? And the only answer you can give me is because you want to, not because your wife, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or friend has told you that you should get help. This has got to be a choice that you make, that it's the right time for you to lose whatever mental baggage that you're hanging on to. And I guess if I kind of reflect back on 20 years ago, if someone told me that I would be doing what I'm doing now with people 20 years ago, I probably would have told them it was just some kind of new age crap. But the reason I wanted to explain in the beginning is that when I come on to explain about how neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy work, it's a little bit abstract. And I can tell you that not only have I learned it, I've experienced it for myself. That was the starting point for me to get better 20 years ago. And now that I've seen hundreds of people get better, I would defend it to my last breath. So I use NLP and timeline therapy. It's very different to normal talk therapy. Some of you may have experienced CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, which is about eye movement and disrupting patterns. There are quite a few therapies out there. Like I said, I'm trained in other ones as well, but actually now I just uniquely work with neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy because they're the two that work the quickest and actually the most effective. And most other therapies, and to some extent a little bit with CBT, what they tend to do is just stick a plaster on the problem that you've got or the issue that you've got. And they give you tools on how to manage the problem that you're having currently. Well, the difference is with NLP, neurolinguistic programming, and TLT, timeline therapy, is that these get rid of the problem permanently. So you don't need sticking plaster tools. You don't need to go online and find out about breathing techniques. You don't need to go online about how to do things like when you're in the middle of an episode to look at 3 things and name them, touch 4 things and name them, do all these kind of things that you can get, which is about managing something. NLP and timeline therapy is about removing it so that there's nothing to manage. And the honesty bit is that this isn't recognised currently by the NHS, which is a real bugbear of mine, because most clients that I see have already been through the NHS processes of CBT or whatever kind of therapy they've been referred to, but it's usually CBT. I had one forward-thinking GP that used to refer clients to me, but as it's not, in theory, being fully tested like CBT has, there's a reluctance to refer. And finally now, and I'm a ripe old age of 57, actually 58 next week, finally NLP and timeline therapy are getting getting the traction that it absolutely deserves, rather than being called a pseudoscience. Because actually everything that I do is based on the writings and the learnings and the knowledge of Freud. And Freud is the kind of grandfather of all psychology, and most therapies, in fact nearly all therapies, are based on Freud. What I do is no different. It just works faster and it's more effective. But the kind of exciting news for me, although probably not in my work lifetime, is that King's College are just beginning a large randomized trial with 200 ex-veterans using NLP to cure PTSD. And this follows a smaller trial with UK veterans that they ran last year that showed some really promising results. In fact, normal CBT had a success rate of about 14%. So it's not a huge success rate. With NLP helping PTSD, their success rate, they estimated at 51%, in as much that 3 months afterwards, the symptoms had gone and not come back. And I think that's the beauty of NLP and timeline therapy, is that it doesn't come back. My success rate is higher than 51%. I think they just did that as pure NLP, neurolinguistic programming. They didn't do any elements with timeline therapy. The two combined are massively powerful and make that 51% just shoot right up. So that 51% will grow. And like I said, nothing will change in my work life, but eventually I genuinely believe that NLP and timeline therapy will replace, or at least be offered alongside, CBT and some of the other therapies that are out there currently. And the other one that's often used for PTSD is prolonged experience therapy. And some of you may have experienced that. That puts you into the situation that you're in, that you were in, and enables you to rethink it. The beauty of what I do, and one of the reasons I really like it, is we don't have to spend a lot of time going into your past and finding out what happened. What we do is just go, right, you're here today, you have a problem, let's just fix it going forward. So it's not about regressing and going back into experiences. It's about what can we do today to help? And I'll explain how that kind of works as we kind of go through the process. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. I post a lot of videos, as Darren mentioned, on Facebook and TikTok. And Darren's already alluded to the fact that him and Gareth saw them and reached out, and more than willingly, I'm here now. So I'm going to kind of talk through some stuff today. And then next month when I come back on, we'll start getting into it a little bit more deeper. So this is a kind of headline for you. One of the things I would suggest is, if you come onto this regularly and you're going to come back again next month, maybe watch this on whatever format you watch it on, YouTube or whatever, before you come back on again next month as a refresher. It'll be a good investment of 45, 50 minutes before we take this to another stage or another level down. And one last thing, I guess, before I kind of start is, if you are on any medications, even if they help you, and even if you find my videos help you when you go back to them, before you decide to come off of them, please consult your GP before taking any action. That's really, really important. I get the clients that I see, a lot of them are on medications, and literally as they leave me, they go, I'm going to stop taking my whatever. And I go, no. Go back, talk to your GP and explain that you've had some help and that now you want to come off them, and do it in the correct time, in the correct process to come off of them. So if this gives you a sense of hope, which I hope it does, if you're struggling, just carry on taking them for now. So the first two uncomfortable truths, and forgive me if any of you have watched my post from last week. I started talking about the first one. I'm posting again tomorrow, next few days, with some other information about these uncomfortable truths, but they're valid and important to cover on here. You have been influenced all your life and through all your service. And a lot of people in life who are struggling will reflect back and say, well, I'm like I am because my mum did this, my dad did this, my sergeant did this. Oh, I experienced this in combat. I experienced that, whatever it is. They'll talk to you about their past, and they are talking about things that absolutely influence them. But here's the first uncomfortable truth is, how you feel today is down to you. And bear with me a second, because I know that's quite confrontational, but it is down to you. And the reason that I know that, and you can know that, is, in fact, I've worked with a few military in the past, and I've worked with police in the past that have gone through some very traumatic events. And two people can experience exactly the same thing, And that could be as trivial as they'll go and see a film together, and one will come out and say, that's the best film I've ever seen. And one will say, well, that was crap. That was the worst film I've ever seen. Or it could be someone comes back from a tour, and like the last guy I met in the army, he was missing a limb and he was absolutely broken. One of his friends that brought him to me, who was similarly injured, had created an amazing life for himself. So two people experience very similar, if not the same things, but respond and react very, very differently. And that's primarily because people lose something. They lose the ability to see that actually you're in control. And if you're continually blaming the other situations, other people, like the government or a race of people, then while you continually blame other people, you cannot get that. Darren, your cough's lovely.
Sorry.
Sorry,
I mute myself, sorry.
Oh, that's right. It's just, it's better than my cough. Mine will start in a minute anyway. But you've got, the fact is you're in control of this. And while you blame other people, or you blame the influences in your life, whether it's parents, school, upbringing, friends, all those kind of aspects, or it could be what you experienced during your service, then you're never going to get better, because actually you can't take ownership for something that you don't believe is within your scope to control. So the first uncomfortable truth is that whatever you're experiencing with mental health issues, and this is for every client I've ever worked with, and with every client I go through this, and their initial reaction can be quite unnerving, but it's a fundamental first thing you need to understand, is that you are in control of this. And the second thing is, if you have anxiety, panic, PTSD, whatever it is, this one's another uncomfortable truth is, You must be getting something out of this at an unconscious level. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. And let me explain that, and just bear with me again. Everyone I work with who has a mental health issue, they are getting something out of it that they've never recognized. And it might just be something at an unconscious level. So consciously, you'll all be looking at me now going, are you mad because I'm feeling like crap? But there is something you're getting out of this at an unconscious level, because otherwise your unconscious would not allow you to do it. And again, I'll cover that a bit later on tonight about why and how that happens. It might be you're getting a little bit more attention from friends and family because they all rally around you, put their arm around you and ask after you and give you lots of attention. It might be that people appear more caring towards you because they know they're struggling. It could even be financial support you're getting from friends, family, or the state, whatever. Or it could be that it's enabling you to avoid some things that you just don't want to do. And that's a hard truth, that maybe you don't want to go to work. So actually this is giving you something, your unconscious is giving you something that it believes wrongly that it is helping you with. And even now, as you're thinking about that, because you undoubtedly will be, some of you will have a light bulb moment and some of you will actually just go, no, you're still mad. But I'd just like to share one story with you. This, from about 6 months ago. I was asked by a father to help his daughter, who was 21 years old and suffering from severe anorexia. And when I met her, even I was shocked. I've helped other people with eating disorders. This 21-year-old girl was as skinny as I've ever seen anyone, even with anorexia. And early on, we had a conversation around this and said, I'm just curious, what is it you're getting out of this? And after she told me to fuck off about 10 times, I said to her, I'm not willing to move on until you understand and you can tell me what it is that you're getting out of this. So I asked her just to close her eyes for a second. And I just said to her, I don't want to talk to you now. I want to talk to your unconscious. And I said, your unconscious mind, I want to answer this immediately. What is it you're getting out of this? And she blurted out, I love winding up my mum and dad, and started crying her eyes out. And when she'd finished crying and everything, and we had a chat, she went, oh my God, all my life, I've loved winding my mum and dad up. I just have. I've enjoyed it. I get a perverse thrill out of winding them up. And this is the biggest wind up ever because they're watching their daughter die. And okay. I said, so do you want to go into hospital and get fed again next week through a tube? And she went, no, I don't. And I went, cool. Now we'll replace that with something. So that you were getting something out of that at an unconscious level. Unconsciously, she had this drive, and all of our emotions are stored unconsciously. She had this drive to want to wind up her parents. And she was a sensible girl. She's now just gone back to university. She's actually put on nearly 2.5 stone. She looks much better. She's got a bit more weight to put on, but she's eating healthily and her life looks very different. And it's important to recognize whatever it is that you're getting out of this, because to heal, you need to replace what you're getting out of it, or at least work towards the thing that you were maybe potentially avoiding. So they're the kind of two uncomfortable truths. One is that you have to take ownership for this. You have to take responsibility for how you feel, and you have to recognize you're in control of this, because if you want to continually blame other people or situations or other influences, then good luck with that, but you ain't going to get any better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, have a think, maybe not now, but just have a think about what you might be getting out of this that is enabling this kind of feeling to carry on. And that's the starting point with every client that I sit down with. If any of you are struggling with PTSD, forgive me, you may well already have a sense of some of this stuff I'm going to cover, but I think it's quite useful to talk about what PTSD is. And some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, I've not had a diagnosis, but I think I got it. And also I get asked quite a lot, is it the same as anxiety, or is it or the same as panic? Well, they're not, because primarily, and I guess obviously, PTSD, and now the new diagnosis has come out in the last couple of years of CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Psychologists really do like all these long lettered things for diagnoses. Complex PTSD, by the way, you may be aware, is when you've had reoccurring trauma throughout a sustained period, opposed to PTSD, which is typically you've had one instance that has caused trauma. Well, PTSD and CPTSD, but I'll just reference it as PTSD for now, is very much about being stuck in the past. It's about things that have happened in the past. It doesn't have a lot to do with the future because your mind is stuck somewhere in the past and hasn't been able to escape that kind of moment of whatever happened in that life, in that time. Whereas anxiety and panic is worrying about the future. So you've got PTSD in the past and anxiety and panic kind of moving out into the future. And you can have either, and actually quite a lot of people I work with have both. And PTSD is far more likely to be psychological, whereas anxiety and panic are far more likely to be psychological and chemical. And it may just be chemical on its own. And if you're worrying about or wondering about, do I have something, do I have not? On here in 3 minutes, trust me, this is not a diagnosis for you, but it's just general information that might help. If you have a chemical imbalance that is causing anything that you feel, there's a few watch outs. One is there'll be no clear trigger. So it's not like you can identify a trigger that makes you feel a certain way. It's just a feeling that you get without anything happening. There may be a family history of this. Quite often when I meet people that have got with panic or really, really high anxiety, I always ask them, which one of your parents did you learn that off from? I have a really nasty phrase that I use with all my clients, which is parents are really designed to fuck up their kids. I've got 3 daughters, but we teach our kids without even meaning to some really bad traits and habits about worrying about anxiety. So if any of you got kids or young kids, just remember they're learning off of you all the time. If they see you being anxious, if they see you panicking, there's a really good reason for you to stop, because they are learning that from you. And in 20 years' time, they may be sitting in front of someone like me going, I get panic attacks, so I'm anxious. If it's chemically based, then it's persistent. The feeling you're feeling is pretty much there 24/7 and doesn't change. And it will also affect things like your sleep, your energy. It will disrupt your eating patterns. And therapy really therapy won't help without medication. Equally, medication doesn't normally work without therapy, but medication is the way that you can enable yourself to go through therapy successfully if it's chemically based. If you have psychological symptoms, then you'll know what the trigger is. There'll be things that typically trigger you. They're normally linked to life events. It's mostly just you. So you haven't really got a family history of this. It's just you that's impacted by it. Your moods can fluctuate. You'll have some really good periods. Then you'll have some really down periods. And sometimes they get misdiagnosed and isn't necessarily diagnosed as PTSD, but it is part of PTSD. And you'll have patterns of overthinking and catastrophizing. So literally, you'll have one very small thing happen to you and you'll catastrophize that to the nth degree that it's going to destroy everything. And it will, and also, but with psychological systems, it can and often does respond very well to therapy. And PTSD is typically psychologically based. So you'll know that it's kind of, you have maybe your own triggers. It could be a car door shutting. It could be a car backfiring and a noise that triggers you from your service or any tours that you've done. And you probably recognize that it's just mostly you. And you might recognize also that your mood fluctuates up and down, that you do have patterns of overthinking and catastrophizing. And if you have tried therapy, then please don't give up on it. If you've had CBT or EMDR or you've any immersive kind of therapy and it hasn't worked for you, that doesn't mean that nothing will work for you. Typically, the people I see have been through everything before they get to me. And that's basically why the first line treatment through the NHS for anxiety is meds and medication, and for PTSD, it's talking therapy. So, as I said, some of you may have experienced that. And importantly, if you have been put on meds, I think this is really important, and people expect the meds to make them feel better. Well, typically you get prescribed SSRIs or SNRIs, which really, they're only just there to kind of balance you a little. That whatever meds that you've been prescribed for anxiety, depression, or for panic, and for PTSD, really they're a starting point to enable you to get the most out of therapy. That isn't sales bullshit. I'm too old in the tooth to bother with all that, and this is about me wanting to help. But so if you've been put on meds, please, if they've really massively changed your life and helped you. So I was having a chat with Darren and Gareth, and they were talking about some other issues and around ADHD, and drugs really help that. They can. My daughter has ADHD. One of my daughters has ADHD. But typically for these kind of things like panic, anxiety, and PTSD, the meds are almost like a starting point or a gateway for you to get into some kind of therapy, because it puts your mind at balance to be able to then go through the therapy. Don't always need them, but if it's a chemically based anxiety or panic or PTSD, then you'll need the meds to be able to get on to or get the most out of therapy. And PTSD is effectively the result of how the brain has coded and stored intense experiences. It's not actually the event itself. So what I experienced to generate my PTSD was in no way as severe as people that have been in service. But it's not the event of that. It's not the actual thing that happened to you or around you that is actually causing the PTSD. It's how your brain has coded that experience and stored that intense experience. And it's really, really not a sign of weakness. And I know there's loads of bullshit phrases out there around mental health issues. And some of them are absolutely great. But the one I would stand by is that PTSD is not a weakness. Any mental health issue is not a weakness, but it's a sign that your system has adapted to constant survival mode. And anyone that's experienced PTSD or anything similar to it or panic will understand that your brain, your mind is constantly working on survival mode. And it's looking for threats all the time. And the slightest thing can trigger that response. And our minds create really strong internal representations that can keep replaying automatically unless we do something about it. And by that internal representation, I mean things like images, sounds, and feelings. And I just kind of want to explain with a graphic how that kind of works. Darren, would you mind pulling up graphic 1, please, mate? Unless he's gone off to make a go. Let's try a different one. No, go back one. The next one. Cool, that one. Hopefully you can see most of that. I don't know if we can get that David Miles bit off for a second with the episode 74, but I know what's behind it, so I can talk through it if it's not. I just want to explain what you're going through if you're struggling. All of us every day, we take on board external and internal information. So the external information is through any one of our 5 senses. We taste something, we feel it, we hear it, we smell it, or we see it. And it could also be internal. That means self-talk, how we talk to ourselves and the things we say to ourselves in our own head. And what happens is all of that information goes into the brain, and it goes into these filters that each and every one of us has in the brain. And it runs them through the filters. Now, filters are based on, as it explains there, our memories and our experience, what's happened to us in the past, the values we have in our lives and what we live by, the decisions we've made in the past and the outcomes of those, and also the distortions we make. Our brain is awful at making distortions. It's like going to a party where you've never met anyone before, and 25 people at the party say that you're the most amazing person they've met and had a great time talking to you. One of them will say, yeah, I didn't like him or her. I didn't like David. And you forget the 25 people that thought you were great. And all you remember is the one person that said that they didn't like you. And when you get home and someone asks you about it, the first thing you say is, yeah, nobody liked me at the party. Because we distort what's really happening to suit things, our own agenda, our own representations in our mind. And quite often we make mistakes with that. Our brain is very good at making mistakes with that, and it distorts and generalizes things. So you experience something externally or internally. It goes through the brain, through those filters, memories, experience, etc. And then it comes out the other end. And what you do on the base of that, you create a unique individual view of yourself. Can we get that back up? Sorry, thanks, mate. You create a unique individual view of yourself. And that's the point at which somebody goes, I'm a great person, I'm not a great person, I'm a failure, I'm a success, I'm struggling, I'm not struggling. I've got this condition, I've not got this condition. You create a view of yourself. And when you create that view of yourself, you feel something. Happy, sad, depressed, angry, hurt, guilty, all of those emotions. And then at an unconscious level, you decide to make a reaction, or you make a decision based on that, and it drives your behavior at an unconscious level. And you walk around for the next however long saying, yeah, I'm great, or I'm a bad person. And that happens to all of us. But that chunk in the middle with the memories, experience, values, and distortions and decisions is so, so important, because that's the area we would work on. And that's the area where you store all the crap and the baggage that actually needs re-educating and relearning, because that then produces a very different result down the right-hand side of the screen. And all of that process takes your unconscious mind about 0.6 of a second. So it feels like it's instant. People often say to me, oh, it just happened. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't control it. Well, actually, that journey through your brain to leading your behavior or reaction or your feeling is 0.6 of a second. So actually, understanding that now gives you actually already an element of control. Because if you know that it isn't instant, if you know that it doesn't happen immediately, that your brain, your unconscious has to go through a process to get to your consciousness and leave you feeling something or making a decision, then that gives you the opportunity to stop it. And throughout the series and over the coming weeks, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that. But just the knowledge of that gives you ownership and control back. 20 years ago, before I learned all this kind of stuff, and that can come down now, Darren, thank you. 20 years ago, when I learned all this stuff, I was awful at road rage. I never chased anybody or did anything stupid like that, but I did the whole swearing and the hand gestures and the finger raised and all that, beeping the horn. And then I started learning a bit more about how the brain works. And actually, the next time I got cut up at a roundabout or wherever, actually, the first thing that came to my head was that I had 0.6 seconds to decide how I wanted to feel about that. If I didn't, then what I effectively was doing is relying on the past dictating how I would feel that moment today. And therefore, I was allowing the past to dictate not only today, but my future. Now, none of us at Doctor Who have got a time machine. So we can't go back and change whatever's happened in your life. It'd be great if we could. I'd make some changes too. But what you can do is actually accept the fact that you have a chance, even in that 0.6 of a second, to change how you choose to react. And when you take that ownership of the 0.6 seconds, that's a starting point. It's a good point to actually say you actually have taken control back. And as like I said, we'll build on that over time. And our brains generalize, things like it happened once to me, so it can absolutely happen again, or it will happen again. And if you do that, it keeps you in that constant protective state of hypervigilance. But remember, these responses are learned, they're learned patterns, and they're learned patterns at an unconscious level, which means they can be unlearned and they can be updated or reprogrammed. And the brain stays in threat mode if you don't do anything about it, meaning it continues to scan for danger, even when you know you're safe, but unconsciously, you're still scanning for it. And that can lead to things like flashbacks, intrusive memories, emotional numbness or detachment. It can lead to a whole host of feelings and symptoms that you might be feeling yourself or know people that are. So I think that 0.2 is a good starting point. The thing to realize is that these reactions come from your brain, and your unconscious has 19 prime directives. There are 19 services that your unconscious provides for you. The main one is that it's there to protect you. You know stuff about your fight, flight, or freeze response. That's an unconscious level. It's your unconscious seeing stuff. God forbid, you saw a lion charging at you down the high street. You wouldn't stop there and think, that's interesting, a lion in the high street. You don't see that very often while it jumps on you and rips your head off. You actually just turn around and run without thinking about it. So your unconscious will protect you as much as it possibly can. And you may have some experiences when you reflect back in service where your unconscious has protected you, made you do something quickly or instinctively that just you did, and it maybe saved you or saved someone that you know. But the thing is, that comes from you, that comes from your unconscious, trying to protect you based on your past experiences. Things have happened to you in the past. But that response, now that you're in Civvy Street, can become outdated, and it's become outdated in present day life. So the key to recovery is not to forget what happened. This is not about erasing your memory. It's not about forgetting what happened, but it is about retraining the mind and your body to recognize when that threat is no longer there. And that kind of leads on to, so what is NLP and timeline therapy? And listen, if you're out there struggling, myself and Darren over the coming weeks are going to put together a program, a 12-week program we'll do online to help people. But equally, go and find somewhere locally to you. From my perspective, if you wanted to work with me in the future, that's great. But just go and look into or speak to somebody locally, if not me, online, that does neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy, because it works. Because both work at an unconscious level. And it's at an unconscious level where change happens quickly. So to understand that, or to explain that, it's important just to understand a few things about the unconscious mind and why you need to get to the unconscious level. So this isn't hypnotherapy, although I am qualified in that as well. This is all the stuff I do. A lot of it is with people's eyes closed, with them imagining things, but no trance work. Everyone's fully conscious, but with their eyes closed, and that just enables them to avoid any distractions more than anything. But there are 19 prime directives that I mentioned. I'm not going to go through all those tonight because it's far too many, but I just want to touch on 5. As human beings, I don't know, you can have a guess how many decisions and reactions you think we might make in a day. And
30,000, you said, didn't you?
Oh, not that many. I wouldn't cope with that. It's about 30,000. Between 30 and 35,000 decisions.
Yeah, that's what I said, 30,000.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. We make about 35,000 decisions every day and reactions every day. So even now, you're not thinking consciously about how you're sitting, about what you're watching. If you're sitting with your legs crossed, you didn't think consciously, and I think now I'll sit with my legs crossed. If you folded your arms, you didn't think that. If you think you're thirsty, if you think you're hungry, if you think you're hot, cold, you're not consciously on the watch out for that. It's just an instinct, and it's an unconscious decision. And 95% of those 30,000 decisions that we make a day, 95% of those are made unconscious, are made at an unconscious level, based on all that stuff in our brain, our history, our values, the things we've learned from decisions we've made in the past, and those distortions. So every couple of seconds as human beings, we are reacting to things we hear, smell, touch, taste, and see. So the first directive of your unconscious is to keep you safe. And like we said about the fight or flight or freeze. And your unconscious gets confused, and it takes you back to a memory where maybe you had contact during service when a car door shuts or slams, and it takes you straight back there. And they're often called triggers. People are bad triggers and good triggers. I have a lovely good trigger, which is I wear this cross. I'm not religious, but my mum gave me this when I was 18 years old. I took it once to have an operation done on my neck. I had to take it off because the surgeon wouldn't allow me to keep it on, however much I protested. But I have not taken this off since I was 18, except for that occasion. Every time I see it in the mirror or touch it, I smile because it reminds me of my mum. And thankfully, not like everybody, but thankfully I had an amazing mum. So it's not, this triggers a really nice feeling within me. So you can have good triggers and bad triggers. You can have triggers that make you very calm and very happy, like a piece of music that you loved when you were a kid, or whatever it is. There's loads of smell of the baking bread, or equally, we have some bad triggers. But there are both. It's important to recognize you have good ones as well as bad ones for what we'll come on to over the coming weeks. So it keeps you safe. The second thing is it follows your instructions. Now, this is really, really important. At the age of about 7, your unconscious stops recognizing negative commands. So if people say to you, or people that you know of, you say to friends or colleagues that are struggling, if you say to them, what is it you want? Quite often, what people will tell you is the things they don't want. They'll say things like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to have this feeling of loneliness or sadness or angriness. I don't want this PTSD. I don't want to ruin the rest of my life. They'll tell you what they don't want. At the age of 7, our unconscious mind stops recognizing negative commands. If you think about this, if I tell you now, whatever you do in the next 3 seconds, don't imagine a pink elephant. I know every single one of you has just imagined a pink elephant, even though I told you don't. Because we don't recognize the word don't at an unconscious level. So if you say, if I say to myself, I don't want to suffer anymore, all your unconscious hears is, I want to suffer anymore. And your unconscious listens to you and obeys commands very, very quickly and very well. You can say things like, I don't want to have this anxiety. Bang, you'll start feeling more anxious because your unconscious will hear, I want to feel this anxiety. So today is a really good time in all aspects of life, whatever you're feeling. Now would be a really good time to start telling yourself, not what you don't want, but tell it what you do want. So things like, I want to be calm, I want to be healthy, I want to be successful, I will get through this, I want to get through this. You start telling yourself and your unconscious, which makes 95% of your decisions for you and listens to everything you say, start telling it what you want instead of what you don't want. So it keeps you safe, it follows instructions really well, but doesn't recognize negative commands. Third element is worth knowing is all memories of all of our lives are stored unconsciously, every single one. Now, consciously, our brains can remember about 7 million bits of information. That sounds like a lot, but I have to remember my name's David, I have to remember this is a laptop, I've got to remember how to use the thing, I've got to remember what number door I live at, I've got to remember my telephone number. All of a sudden, 7 million bits of information just go like that. They're just gone. Your unconscious, though, is like a huge hard drive. It just keeps every bit of information from the moment you were born is stored unconsciously. And to some people, that might seem like a bit of a struggle, but evidentially, and actually that's just not psychology, that's actually science, that your unconscious, your memory will store every aspect of your life. And that's important, again, for the future when we start getting into a little bit more about timeline therapy. Now, give you an easy example of this. Some of you may have experienced something like this. I like going to a pub quiz, and this happens to me a lot. It happens to people I know. It happens to clients that I tell this story to. But quite often a question will come up. Typically, the one I always kind of think of is, one of the questions at a quiz was, who starred in Raging Bull? And some of you probably are now shouting at the screen saying, oh, it was so-and-so and so-and-so. Well, this particular night, I was getting really, really frustrated because I was saying to my friends, I said, this is really annoying. I've seen that film twice. It's a classic film, Oscar-winning, black and white film from the 60s. Amazing film, great film about boxing. Oh, Christ, what was the name of the guy that was in it? What was the name? Oh, I can't remember his bloody name. And they're going, come on, because we only, he's going to move on now. And I go, and I couldn't get it at all. And then probably about 10 minutes later, when he's moved well on past that question to other things, I just sat there and shouted out Robert De Niro. And my mates kind of went, yeah, that's great, a bit late now. And I was going, yeah, I know. And people say, where did that come from? And most people, when you get asked that, would say, I don't know, it came out of nowhere. Well, it didn't, because my unconscious has stored everything about my life, everything. So at some point, 10 minutes afterwards, my unconscious has gone, he's getting a bit pissed off about this and it's frustrating him. I've got all this information here that I'm storing away from his consciousness because our brains couldn't handle that volume of data. It's in there. I'll let him have that one because actually I'm designed to protect him. I'm designed to keep him going and keep him well. And he needs that bit of information. So that release comes through. They'll release that bit of information. So 10 minutes later, I just shut out Robert De Niro. And I'm sure most of you will have experiences where that kind of thing happens, whether it's at a quiz or other things in life. But all of our memories are stored unconsciously. So your unconscious keeps you safe. It follows your instructions really well without recognizing negative comments. It stores all of our memories of all of our lives, way back when, the ones we can't remember consciously. Also, all of our emotions are stored unconsciously. Our emotions are an unconscious reaction because you don't consciously decide how you want to react or feel to things. It just feels like it happens. So you don't wake up in the morning and go, right, how should I feel today? I know I feel like shit. Good, right, how do I do that then? I'll shut all the doors, close the curtains. What else do I do? I do that. You don't make a plan for it. You just, excuse me, you just wake up and you feel a certain way. And that's all driven at an unconscious level because you don't do the things I just said. You don't plan to feel anything. You just feel things instinctively. And it's why sometimes you can feel really happy and then 10 minutes you're really sad and you don't know why. Something has happened at an unconscious level that's enabled that transition to happen. So it keeps you safe. It follows your instructions without recognizing negatives, stores all your memories, all your emotions. And also, all of our memories are held in a linear line by time. So literally the way that our unconscious and our brain store our memories is literally like a timeline back through our lives. And it stores them pictorially. Our memories are stored in a pictorial fashion. And I'll just explain that to you because you can all experience this. You can shout your answer out. No one will hear it, I promise, if you're muted anyway. But you can just think about your answer. But if I just ask you, what's the color of your front door? Where's the number on your front door? And if you drive, what's your car registration number? I guarantee that every single one of you has just got an image of your front door and an image of your car number plate. Because our memory doesn't actually recall things, it describes things. So actually, when I ask you what color your front door is, the first thing you do, consciously and unconsciously, is see your front door to be able to tell me that it's white. Then you see your car, you see the number plate, and you read the number plate off as a memory, but actually you're reading it off of the picture that your memory has created. And on the next episode, we're going to explain how we can use that, and we'll do a demonstration on how you can use that to change how at an unconscious level you react to things. And forgive me this one thing, I'll give you a little teaser with this, and some of you will go, wow, that's actually, like my reaction 20 years ago, you might go, well, that sounds like new age crap, but it really isn't. Is if you think about the time that you were happiest in your life and you get a picture of that in your mind. So some of you are doing that now. Just think of the time that you were the happiest and actually get an image of that time, get a picture of that time, or stick with that picture. That picture will have certain attributes. It might be in color, it might be a movie, it might be a still picture, it might be in focus, it might be defocused, there might be volume and sounds with it that are loud or quiet. There could be feelings attached to that, which could be inside of you or outside of you. The picture that you've created, the image could be framed or it could be all the way around you. And every happy memory that you have, the way that your unconscious recognizes is that it's happy is by the attributes of the image it creates. I hope that makes sense. On the other side of it is, and I really don't want you to do that, but as you know, I said that if I ask you to don't do something, you're going to do it. So I'd like you just to sit and listen, and this is an element where participation isn't needed. But if you thought of a bad memory and I asked you to get that image up, there would be some differences about how that picture is represented to you from your happy memory. There'll be lots of similarities, but there'll be significant differences. So maybe one's in color, one's in black and white. Maybe one is framed, the other one is panoramic. One has no noise and one has very loud noise. One has feelings inside, feelings outside. For some of you, the picture that's created might be very small, it might be huge, it might be close to you, it might be far away. There are lots of attributes your unconscious attributes to images in your memory. And that's how it decides whether you're going to be happy or sad or angry. So if you played around with some of those images and confused your unconscious, the next time that you encountered something that typically would make you feel sad, if your unconscious was expecting to find a memory with an image that was in color and it was in black and white, it would get confused. And if it's expected to see an image that had no sound, but actually had the sound of laughter, it would get confused. So by playing around with the attributes of stored memories, you can change the reaction that you feel. Remember, I said to you, this is not about putting a plaster over anything. This is about changing things at an unconscious level. And I wanted to give you an idea about how this stuff might start to work for you, because like I said, for me, it was quite out there as well 20 years ago. I'm conscious of time, Darren. I've got typically you'll all get to know me over the coming months. Typically, I always prepare far too much for these things and rabbit on far too much. I've got easily another 25 minutes or so to go through.
Yeah, perfect.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we've got an hour and a half tops.
All right. Could you bring up graphic 2 for us, please?
Yep, will do.
Thanks, mate.
That one?
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay,
So
just get rid of the writing.
Thank you. And this kind of just summarizes why all this is important. Every single person I have that comes to me has a presenting problem at that top line. They'll say things like, I'm anxious, or I get emotional, I get angry, I get sad, I have PTSD. They'll have a presenting problem. And what a lot of therapy does, it then says, okay, let's look at the negative limiting belief that you've got. And it will try and talk through talking and explaining it and reframing things. It will try to give you a different perspective. But a negative limiting belief that could drive any of those three things or any kind of mental health issues could be things like, I'm not good enough, or, oh, this is going to repeat in my life again. So the presenting problem might be actually that somebody's got PTSD, but actually the bit that sits underneath that is driving that is that maybe there's a belief that says I'm not good enough, or it will happen again, or it could be anything. For different individuals, that belief underneath it could be very, very different. So what helps with clients is that we change the negative belief at an unconscious level. And I'll explain that again over the coming months. We change that over at an unconscious level. And we then, with timeline therapy, change the negative emotions, because those negative emotions of sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and anger are all the things that sit on an unconscious level that you've attached to memories, or clients attached to memories, that drives the limiting belief, that drives the presenting problem. So it's not about resolving PTSD. It's not about resolving a feeling of not being good enough or it will happen again. It's all of that, but it's a starting point is we need to get rid of any sadness, fear, hurt, or guilt or anger that you have in your past that you've attached to a memory that causes you to have PTSD. So that's what timeline therapy is. And I'll kind of explain that briefly for you, how that kind of works. Have you got the final graphic, please, mate? Thank you. This is kind of how our unconscious minds work, in effect. So as you can see on that yellow line, you've got a past, a now, and a future. And effectively what happens is you experience something now. So you're at the balloon where it says now, and you experience something. Someone says something to you, you hear something, you feel something, you taste something, all those senses things, or you even think something to yourself. It can equally be that you've just had a thought to yourself. And like we started talking about, what your unconscious effectively does, it works its way all the way back to through your past where those red arrows are indicating. And it goes all the way back to the first time that you experienced a similar event. So, for argument's sake, your unconscious goes all the way back and it remembers a time that I'm going to make this up as I go along, you went to a fireworks show and got very scared or felt fearful, as I've written there. So the first similar event is I felt fearful with the banging and everything like that. Then it will come back all the way to now. But what it does, your unconscious stops at the next similar event, and there will be dozens and dozens and dozens. It will stop at the next similar event where you heard a loud noise, and it just went, and you went, yeah, actually, I felt more fearful about that. It was worse than the last time. And then it might go back through loads of other events, and then it will find another event where you heard a loud noise, which could have been when you were serving, probably what could have absolutely been when you were serving. And actually, this time you feel really scared. And actually, what your unconscious is very good at is learning from previous experiences and snowballing and making them grow and becoming bigger. So your unconscious says, okay, a car door slams now. It goes all the way back into the past, finds the very first time you heard a noise you didn't like, I've mentioned fireworks, and then it starts coming back all the way to now, stopping at every other event that seems similar. And it gets to that horrible one that you experienced maybe when you were serving, and it says, right, based on all of that, how should I help me feel now? Your unconscious says, how should I help me feel? And it says, based on experience and everything I've learned, he should be petrified. So you hear a car door go, it takes you right back to that memory and you get that feeling back instantly. Now, that memory is encased with all the negative emotions that we mentioned, like anger, hurt, fear, and guilt, and sadness. It could be all of them or some of them. That memory has all those emotions attached to it. Now, here's the thing. If we could go back to that first event with the fireworks, and we could take away that feeling of fear that you had, so the memory will still stay there. You'll be able to say, actually, you know what? I remember being scared, but I can't get that feeling back. But I do remember it. If we could get you to that point, and then every single event all the way back to now, we could do the same, where you get a memory of something that made you fearful or scared because of noises or bangs or whatever, and say, right, take away the emotion from that memory, so it's just a memory, but it's not a trigger. And then it did that on every single event back to now. The next time you heard a car door slam and your unconscious goes back through to the past, to the very first memory it has of a noise in your life having an effect on you, it goes, right, I need to decide how I should feel now. It goes all the way back to the past, the first event, and goes, right, oh, actually, there's no emotion attached to that memory. There's fireworks. I could see fireworks, but I didn't really feel anything. Okay. And then it comes to the next event. And similarly, it goes, oh, there's another event there with a loud noise, but I can't find any emotion attached to that memory. Okay. And it goes all the way back to now. If you've taken the emotion away from those memories and replaced it with something far more proactive and something far more positive that you learned about that experience, excuse me, then your unconscious doesn't have a reference point to how you should feel now. So the car door slams tomorrow and you go, it's a door slamming. Because in that 0.6 of a second, we mentioned earlier, your unconscious has gone all the way back to now, through the past, and all the way back to now to decide how you should feel, but has no reference points anymore. So actually, like I said earlier, taking the emotion away from the memories is how you get rid of it rather than sticking a plaster on it. So timeline therapy works at doing that. It works at removing those negative emotions. And when those negative, thanks, Martha. That's nice of you to say. I hope you can get that later. If not, I guess you can watch the recording. then as it goes back through time, it has no reference points for you. And this is really important because many of you maybe have experienced, or people that you know that are struggling have experienced, that it started off as bad and it's getting worse. It used to be if a car backfired, it would trigger something. Then it was a car door. Then it was a front door. Then it was someone dropping a mug on the floor. Then it was somebody dropping a pen on the floor. Because over time, your unconscious gets better and better and better at doing the problem, unless you decide to do something. If you just let it continue, that's how people eventually get worse and worse. And that's when the negative emotions completely overtake you. And there's some horrible things that happen at the end of that. So it's really, really important to understand how that works. We've already mentioned about that 0.6 for a second, giving you a degree of comfort and a degree of control back over that time and that journey that your unconscious is taking. But it is really, really important to recognize how you get to that feeling before you can start any kind of therapy. That can come down now. Thanks, mate.
Yep, 1 second.
No worries, thank you. So all of this, so, you know, there's a really cool thing with working with military personnel. One is actually your training's already really proven that your mind can be conditioned and reconditioned. Like I said, I've experienced the military through family and also from clients. And you've experienced this about how you can become conditioned and equally how you can become reconditioned. So you know that these changes are possible because you've experienced them yourself. I think also one of the reasons why this should resonate with military is because all these automatic, so we believed 45 minutes ago, reactions, good or bad, they actually come from repeated neural patterns. The more you do something, the more it becomes instinctive. Our unconscious is built on habit forming. Our unconscious is built on repetition to develop those habits. The easiest way of describing this is if it's a long time ago for me. If you remember when you learned to drive, the first time you got in a drive, and if it was a manual car, everything was clunky. Everything was conscious. You were checking your gear stick. You were looking down at the gear stick. You were thinking about where your left foot was, where your right foot was. You were listening for the engine rising and lowering. You were feeling for the braking point. All of that, you were constantly going, must check my mirrors, must do this. And then you drive for a couple of years. And then actually, after you've been driving for a couple of years, you drive unconsciously. You don't think about changing gears, you just do it. You don't think about the clutch, you just do it. You don't think about indicating, you just do it. You don't think about checking your mirrors, you just do it. And sometimes you get to a destination, you might even wonder how you got there because your mind has been somewhere else. You've driven completely unconsciously. You haven't crashed, you've been safe, and your unconscious has driven the car for you. I've often done that. I've driven from work to home and then got home and thought, how the shit did I get here? Because I've been thinking about something else consciously, and my unconscious has basically been doing the driving for me. So repetition, the more you do something, the more you believe that you are well, the more your unconscious will learn that. The more you tell yourself and believe you are unwell, it would believe that, and it will do that for you as well. So repetition, and a positive repetition, is important. If you go down a route of any kind of therapy, but specifically with neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy, people worry that it's erasing memories. It really isn't erasing memories. I'm not that clever. But what they do is they remove the emotional overload that's attached to the memories. And if your unconscious doesn't have that emotional overload as a trigger, it can't trigger anything. And the result is you keep the lesson that you learned from that experience about yourself, the good lesson about yourself, and you lose all the unnecessary emotional weight that you attach to it. And for a practical outcome for veterans, that means that the hypervigilance goes, it means that anger spikes go, it means that emotional triggers go, and actually it gives you increases in how you can control stress, how you control under stress, gives you clarity in decision making, emotional resilience, emotionally stronger. And like I said, it's faster than traditional talk-based approaches because it works at that unconscious pattern level. So please, whatever you decide to do in the future, have a look into NLP and timeline therapy. Like I said, because I've experienced it, And equally on myself when I was poorly, and it worked. And equally, I've seen it in many, 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 many people I've helped with a whole host of mental health issues. And I guess just really, if I was going to summarize everything that I do with clients and the therapies that I use, I guess it's like updating the software that your brain runs on so that old experiences stop triggering outdated reactions. I guess I could have started with that an hour and 10 minutes ago and just called it a day. But it's like updating the software that your brain runs on so old experiences stop and it stops triggering outdated reactions. So listen, I kind of hope you found that interesting. I've absolutely run over my time. Thank you, Darren. I hope you found that useful as foundation. Like I said, over the coming months, I'd like the opportunity to build on this. Myself and Darren are going to have a chat about a program potentially we could offer. And you can get, if you want to have a chat or you've got any other questions, and you can get hold of me through Darren. I also post a lot on Facebook. I post a lot on Darren's veteran site on Facebook. In fact, I always post everything into that site, as well as others. So you'll see them on there. Maybe go and watch a couple of the videos, but you can contact me on my Facebook page through Darren. He also put my email address a few times, so hopefully you got a chance to see that. And I'm more than happy to email reply questions, or if you'd like a bit more information about how this stuff works and what you could do personally, I'm more open to have a phone call and have a quick chat. So the offer's there. If you take it, great. If you don't, it would be a shame. And that's me done, really.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, David, for coming on. That was really, really interesting. And I just got a couple of questions as well. So,
Of course.
So say, so I how can I give this an example without mentioning any names? So say somebody's got abandonment issues.
Yeah.
Is it easy to forgive, but you can't forget? What would be your way?
Yeah.
Of,
I've had a conversation recently with somebody that was struggling to get over a relationship, and actually, when you get underneath the skin of it, and actually, it took me about 2 or 3 minutes to identify that actually one of the things the person was struggling with, it wasn't attachment issues, it was really, really low self-esteem. And so, like I said to you previously, and to everybody, sorry, is on that slide where it comes down from the presenting problem is I can't get over relationships with people, I attach myself too much to them. Cool. Underneath that was a limiting belief that said, actually, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. I don't love myself that much. I'm not great. So I attach to people that want to be around me, and I try compulsively to help other people because that gives me a sense of value. So, and underneath that feeling of I'm not good enough sits all those negative emotions. So I would work with anyone like that, and I'd say, right, well, let's get rid of all the negative emotions that you have related to your self-belief and your self-esteem. Because when you get rid of those, all of a sudden that limiting belief of maybe I'm not good enough will go. And then the presenting problem, which is the attachment issues, will go. So it's not the presenting problem that you get into. It's about what's the limiting belief that sits underneath that, and then what's the emotions that sit underneath that. The negative ones are attached to old memories around, childhood, around anything else that may have left that person feeling they weren't good enough. And typically people will know what they are.
and also another one is obviously I lost my oldest child. I was in the army at the time. It was a one night stand. I wasn't there for the child at all. The child obviously died, passed away. How would you expect someone to cope with that? Because I have a lot of false guilt for that. And
so well, the first thing is, and forgive the first part of the answer because it's very similar to the last one, is we get rid of the guilt that you've attached to that memory. So I know you find this hard to believe at a conscious level, and people often do that I work with, especially with bereavement, and we've had a private chat where the guilt I associated with my thing from 20 years ago. And I got rid of that very quickly with a guy that I mentioned earlier. The guilt side of it is attached to the memory. So you have a memory of a very incredibly sad memory of your son passing away and you not being there for him. Well, actually, through timeline therapy, And from taking some learnings from that experience, we can get your unconscious to release the guilt from that memory. So you'll always have the memory that you weren't there. But what your unconscious won't be able to find is the negative emotion you've attached.
Negatives, yeah.
So you'll think about it like I now think, forgive me guys, we had a chat a few days ago. Part of my anxiety and depression was because my mum passed away and the guilt I felt with that. I couldn't bear to wear this. I kept it on. I mentioned earlier about this cross that I wear because it reminds me of my mum because she bought it for me. And after going through and getting the guilt removed from the memory and the experience, I just walked out and started putting all the pictures back of my mum around. And don't get me wrong, I haven't got a shrine to that. But I think you can get rid of the guilt when you take the learnings from it. Your unconscious can then release that negative emotion. The other thing that's really important with any bereavement, and whether it's you've had the worst kind of bereavement, Darren, but with any bereavement, whether it's even parents, which you kind of expect because your parents are designed to die before we do. The way I explain it to people is, and there's loads of bullshit out there about all the crap you get with that. You'll get over it with time; it'll get better. So that's kind of okay, and you can absolutely help it with things like the timeline stuff. But the way I explain it to people is, before that happened, your life was this kind of big circle, and everything in it was pretty well defined for you, and you knew what was happening. You were joining the army, in your case, you're doing stuff, and then something really shitty happens, and people say, actually, you'll get over it in time. Well, actually, here's the tough love. The tough love is you don't get over something like that, but what you can do is that was your life before. You accept the fact that something very tragic has happened in your life. You don't need to feel guilty for that, but it happened. And what you do is you build a new life around that tragedy. And I think that's what you do. It's a new you. It's not Darren before. It's the life that you build around that for yourself.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that, you can start creating a new life. But people I've worked with people that, in fact, I have a very good friend who lost a daughter. Her daughter was 33. I know your lad was younger, but her daughter was 33, and she grieved for far too long. She'll never get over it. It'll always be a memory, but actually 6 years down the line, she should think of her daughter and smile about the amazing 33 years that a lot of people don't get. And forgive me, Darren, you didn't.
Yeah.
So actually, when you and I did some work with her, it's not as easy when it's a friend, but hey. But it's what she's managed to do is now say, okay, I've had this tragedy in my life, and that tragedy is always going to be there. It's never going to disappear. It happened. But what I can do is build my life back around that. And it might look different, but it can still be happy and it can still be fulfilling. And with a degree of help that I was able, thankfully, to help her with, she's got her life back on track. And she took all the photos of her daughter down like I did of my mum. She took all the photos down of her kids and didn't want to. She deleted them off her phone because she couldn't bear to see her. Now they're all back up, and now she smiles because she just recognises the time they did have, opposed to the time they're not going to have. So people take doing grieving kind of therapy is tough because people expect you to wave a wand and make the feeling go. You can make the feeling better, but actually you can switch the feeling. Over time, you switch the feeling from I miss that person to actually, do you know what? I have really great memories of that person. I can build a life around it. And grieving is this. And again, most of you probably get a sense. I'm fairly direct with clients, and we have a laugh, we have a joke. I like having a laugh and joke, but this is a tough learning. Is that grieving is quite a selfish thing, because you're not really grieving the person because the person has gone. It's the saddest thing in the world. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to empathise with you, Darren, because why would I want to empathise with someone?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
because I wouldn't want that to ever happen to me. So I don't want to understand how that feels because it'd be horrible. But I think it's that person now. Whatever your belief system is gone, or is in a better place, or is just got whatever. Unfortunately they've gone. So now it's about you and being a little bit selfish and building your life. And also just thinking about, what he would want for you.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
years later, he wouldn't want you sitting there struggling about it.
No, of course, yeah.
He
Well,
wanted that.
like I said, I did the Spectrum for Change program, and
Yeah,
over the months, it's sort of like it's at the back of the mind now. As also
yeah.
another issue I had was my real father was he was stabbed to death. He was killed at
Yeah.
around the age of 2. I didn't know him, so I couldn't remember him. I only found out at a teenager age that my dad now isn't actually my dad. So it's like,
Okay.
yeah, it's really, really difficult. But I've always wanted to know who my real dad was, and then I want to see a picture of him. I've never seen that, and it was just killing me, eating me up inside.
Yeah.
I hit drink, I hit drugs, I had a massive cocaine addiction. I've told everyone before.
Yeah.
So like it was really, really, really tough. But I'm not using that as an excuse, But that's what it led. But I don't regret ever doing drugs. I don't ever regret it because it's made me who I am now. Yes, I did a lot of bad things whilst I was taking drugs, but I don't ever regret it because I've learned from it.
Hey, listen, we've had the chat before, mate. That one of the reasons why I agreed to help out was because actually, you've got a pretty inspiring story yourself, and you've managed to turn stuff around. In fact, I've just paid you a really big compliment. You've gone offline. He really has gone offline. On the premise that he will be now struggling to try and get back online. I don't know. Forgive me, I've never used StreamYard before. If there is anybody still watching live, because we don't get a sense of who might be. If anyone's got any questions they wanted to type into the chat, I guess you're seeing that. It says chat with everyone in studio, or I think Darren's coming back.
Yeah, sorry, it kicked me off there. Somebody made a phone call. I did mute them all, but
that's right. Don't worry. I'm just saying if there's anybody watching live, if they wanted to type in a question while we're here, but we don't know who's out there or what.
No, we don't. We've had some quite good numbers on actually, but what frustrates me on X is a lot of them come on X and they can't actually comment in the comment bar.
Okay.
So I do say to everyone that's watching, if you can jump over to the Facebook or the YouTube, a lot of people are on Facebook. I think we've had about 80 shares already.
Okay.
But yeah, jump over to Facebook and YouTube. If you are on X next week, jump over to Facebook and YouTube. I say that every time because you can't comment. I don't know why. You can comment once the show's done. Just one last question as well. So a lot of people when they leave the army, they have the brotherhood, they have the camaraderie. Say, for instance, 22 year civs. Gareth did 22 year civs. I'm not saying he's got this problem because that's not the case, but people find it hard to adapt to civilian life because they get programmed. I think you used another word for it, but they don't get deprogrammed.
Conditioned or reconditioned. Yeah,
that's it. Yes. So what would your advice be on that? Your module, what you do fits all aspects of life.
I know. Okay, without letting my personal feelings come into this, but a little bit. You guys don't get enough help when you leave. You know that. Everyone knows that. But you really don't because it's
you left the fence for yourself. Basically,
you go in there. A lot of people go in there fairly young. Like my brother-in-law went in literally the day after his 18th birthday. He did 10 years, and he went in a very timid young lad, and he came out a fighter. He'd seen action, and he struggled to get back to the shy little kid that he was at 18 because he'd been turned into this machine thing that could go out and do whatever he was told to do. And I think that the whole bit about adapting is, I think, one of the challenges that we have, and I guess this, and let me be slightly controversial again, is that there's an old saying, and it is absolutely true, is whether you believe you can or can't do something, you're right. So if you believe that you can adjust to civvy life, then you probably will have a good chance. If you believe you can't, you're right. Yeah. And the trouble is now is everything you hear in every format, and don't get me wrong, I love you guys, that's why I'm doing this. But you're going to attract people that potentially are struggling. All of your viewers will be people that know someone or have struggles in their past. What you're not going to get on this show, potentially, or you may have in the past, Darren, I hope I'm wrong, but you're not going to get people coming on here going, yeah, I left the army and it was great, got a job, got promoted, happy days. But they are out there. Yeah, it's just that's not your experience.
No, you're right.
And so I think it's a lot of it is same as what I said earlier, is how come there are people that enable to, how come some people adapt very easily and get on with their lives, and a lot of people struggle. And I'm not diminishing the struggle, because I think it must be, excuse my language, fucking hard.
Yeah.
Especially after 20 years of being conditioned to be this fighting machine, obey orders. Then all of a sudden you've got to make decisions for yourself. And oh, by the way, if you punch someone, you're in jail rather than getting the telling off or kicking him behind the barracks or whatever. It's a very different world, and I think people just have to go, when people leave the army nowadays without being able to get the help that I think they should be entitled to make that transition. Then I think it's a matter of just actually having a belief that it's going to be okay, and actually believing that you can achieve something, and believing you can get a job. If people come out, if people for the last 6 months of their service before they leave are talking to their mates all the time going, fucking hell, I'll never get a job when I get out. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Trust me, when they get out, they won't get a job. If the mindset that you adopt to it isn't the cure-all, but it is a huge step forward into actually making something. Because otherwise, the day you demob, you just go, fuck it, I'm on the dole then. That's me done. Or you go, right, I've got to go and live with my mum and dad again, which will be shit or I've got to live with my mates again, or I've got to do whatever. But actually, it's temporary, because I'll find something to do. I'll be able to rent a cheap shithole to start with, but then I can move up to something. And it's how they get away from, and I'm 57 now, I've seen it more and more as I grow up, this whole kind of feeling, and it's not, and I'm not talking about military specifically, but we have this kind of entitled mentality in this world, where we all believe we're entitled to something. No, you've got to fucking create it. And actually, whilst I believe the government should do far more for you guys to support you coming out than they do, and I absolutely believe that, equally, you've got to take some responsibility for it. And you've got to say, right, fuck it, no, I will not let this happen to me. I'm not going to be the bloke on the streets living under the subway. I'm going to be the fucking guy that's living with his mum and dad. It's shit for 6 months, but then I'll get a job, then I'll rent somewhere. And in 2, 3, maybe 4 years' time, my life will be different. You can either choose that path, or you choose to go and say, fuck it, it's done. I've got nothing out there for me. And I think that's the bit people could do with some help with, and I think that's what you guys are doing. I think you guys are offering something that is missing. Yeah. And maybe you'll never get the recognition for it that you deserve. I hope you do, but it's kind of, but that's why I believe it's a good thing that you're doing. If there's anything with people that are either serving or just about to come out or have left, any of this helps one or two of them, then it's worth doing.
Yeah, definitely. David, thank you so much. We've got 2 minutes before the end of the show.
No worries.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. It was absolutely incredible.
Good. I look forward to hearing any feedback you get, because
you'll see the feedback as it comes on. You'll see the comments in it. We'll start tagging more people in and stuff like that.
And also, for anyone that's watching this, just I've got some ideas about what we do in a few weeks' time when I come back on. But equally, if you've got anything you'd specifically like to ask that I can address to everybody, then please email Darren or me or Facebook or message or whatever, and I'll try and incorporate some stuff in that you specifically would find useful.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. So guys, his emails are in the comments. If you look in the comments on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, you'll see his email in there. Please contact him if you're interested. You live in Watford, don't you? You live in Watford. He does like seeing people face to face. It's better, but he is going to do a 12-step program. We're looking in talks and doing that. Absolutely great to have you on the show, David. And I believe we're going to have you on once a month and do.
That's right. Yeah.
It won't be for the full hour, but he'll have his 20-minute slot or something, fill up the gap, because this is a big topic for the mental health situation, and it needs to be more spoken about, because veterans are too proud. Not just veterans and civilians. Some people are too proud to reach out. Guys, this is the Late Night Veteran Show. I have to end it here. I've not got long left. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thanks for inviting me.
I pledged allegiance to the flag God stood beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly. And this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of